Liam Crowley of The Direct here with the definition of a triple threat in Hollywood. He acts, sings, and even composes music for major motion pictures across the globe. Not only did he just release his debut album, Variety Show, but he's also the star of Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Josh Cruddas. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
This is the best introduction I've ever had in my life. I gotta record that and play it everywhere I go. That's very, very kind. I'm doing great. How are you? Good to
I'm
see you.
fantastic, and thank you for that compliment. Because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to get my interview subjects like riled up as soon as we
Oh,
start.
I'm
So
great. I'm really excited now. This is good. Be great.
good stuff. Well, hey, let's talk about Resident Evil. It's coming out next week. I'm curious. We've seen so many Resident Evil movies before. What attracted you to this project in particular?
Well, I think just the fact that they were making a origin story of the Resident Evil universe was what kind of made me super excited because I've obviously known about the movie series for a long time, but also the games were like, keep saying to everybody, I could never play them as a kid. I was always too terrified, but I loved them, as an adult. Obviously, they're iconic in terms of how to do a proper horror game and also make it, kind of fun and like, tongue in cheek. Like, there's just like great stuff about it. So yeah, as soon as I heard that they were making another one, and luckily, a couple of the producers had produced a movie that I did called Polar for Netflix. And so I sent in a tape for Ben, who I wish I could say was the star, but he's not the star of the movie. He's one of many, an ensemble of characters. But yeah, so I sent in a tape for him when I was home for the holidays in Nova Scotia, and then yeah, we got to do it last December during the middle of COVID. But man, it was an amazing crew, amazing team on the ground, and then an amazing cast, obviously. And I think people are gonna really dig it, which I'm excited to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned your character, Ben Bertolucci. He's a staple of the Resident Evil video game franchise.
Yeah.
And when it comes to characters that are so ingrained in the lore that projects are based off of, there's always a fine line to ride, I feel like, as an actor, of
Yeah.
giving in a true adaptation while also kind of putting your own unique spin on it. So how did you kind of ride that balance when approaching this character?
It's a great question. Yeah, Ben was a character that I was familiar with before I taped for it, but I honestly didn't. I didn't go back before the tape. I didn't go back to the games because I was like, okay, I know, there is a really fine line about, there's another actor who played that character in the games, right? Like it's not just a robot; it's another actor voicing this character, and then eventually doing mocap for the remaster, the remake. And so I was like, I don't want to, copycat another actor's performance. Like that's not what I'm here for. The script's completely different. The character, even in the script, you're reading it, and you're like, okay, they are kind of, they're expanding him a bit and expanding his world, and also making some cool creative choices. So I really wanted to kind of give my own take on it. And the fact of the matter is, I've got ginger hair, and in the game there's no Ben Bertolucci with the ginger. So I think they were smart about that. They're like, okay, we're going to, obviously this game is iconic, and have all these other amazing actors playing all these iconic characters, but there's room for a bit of like, oh, like this is a guy that we know, this is the world in which we know, but you know, we're gonna not subvert expectations, but just keep people on their toes, and just introduce a little more blood, pun intended, new blood, pun intended, into the universe, which I think they really did.
And when it comes to preparations, were you someone that just played a bunch of Resident Evil games in order to get in the mindset of this role?
Well, yes. The short answer, yes. I again, I'm one of those people who gets scared by watching, Paw Patrol. So it's a bit of a a tough world to kind of sink my head into for hours at a time. Because like horror movies, I've been lucky to work in a lot of horror movies, and even after filming them, reading the script, same with this one, hundreds of times, not hundreds of times, but a lot of times. I still get scared. Jump scares always work on me. I'm never desensitized, so it was a bit tough to kind of fully immerse myself again. But yeah, you have to, in order to get the spirit of the games. You've got to play them, but you also have to immerse yourself in the script too, which was fantastic. So really kind of getting in there, and just playing with the other actors on the day, like playing with Avon, who is so good as Leon in this movie, and just yeah, finding our relationship, and getting that cooking. And yeah, once that homework is done, you just get to show up and play, and it's a blast.
And fans of the game know Ben as that investigative journalist who has that, you gotta trust me attitude, like something's coming and all that. We've seen a lot of characters like that in movies other than, say, a Resident Evil. I think of like Bryan Cranston's role in the Godzilla movie from 2014,
Yeah,
John Goodman in 13 Cloverfield Lane. Did you take
right.
any inspiration from other actors and other characters outside of the Resident Evil franchise who also have that "you gotta trust me" attitude?
It's a great question, and yes, I think maybe even subconsciously, because you watch these kind of movies, and there are, yeah, you're right. There's a not a stereotype, but a bit of an archetype of character who's like has the truth and is this sympathetic character, but like there's also something, maybe a little bit off that you don't immediately trust them, right? And there's a reason for that. And so certainly I think Ben, when we meet him in the games, and certainly when we meet him, I'm not going to give too much away for the movie, but there is a desperation that comes with knowing the truth and having people stonewall you for years or however long it's been. And so certainly, yeah, Ben. He has to really get the message across, and there's as you'll see in the movie, he has to do that, and we'll find out if he succeeds or not, but it's a fun journey.
And we know now that this is the 7th live action Resident Evil film. We've had 6 beforehand. What makes this one different from all the other ones besides the fact that it's an origin story?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like at the end of the day, the first 6 movies are iconic in their own way, and they're amazing, but this one takes us back to 1998. It takes us back to 1998, where we're seeing the origin stories of all these characters that we've come to love from the games, right? So it's a very familiar. Fans of the game are being like, oh, okay, here's the actual, Spencer Mansion. Here's the actual Raccoon City police station that they got the blueprints from Capcom to make, as organically as they could. And so it's quite a different vibe. It's much scarier, I think, than the the other ones. It's more leans in that direction, but there's still amazing action. Obviously, it's fun to watch. Like all of that stuff, the DNA of Resident Evil, the games, has been really built into this movie, and that I think is what sets it apart.
Well, that's really cool to hear. I'm sure fans are going to be absolutely overjoyed to hear that. I kind of want to shift now to just your career as a whole as an actor. You've worked with some really big names in Hollywood: Jason Momoa in C, Mads Mikkelsen, as you mentioned, in Polar, and next year, Halle Berry in Moonfall. Have you had any of those moments as an actor where you're like, oh man, I can't believe I'm working with, person X? Have you had any of those kind of starstruck moments and you realize, man, this is my job?
Oh, all the time. It comes with the territory, I think. Like, so yeah, certainly. I think the story I love to tell is that I was very, very lucky. Yeah, all the people you mentioned are like just insane. I wish I got to work with Hallie on Moonfall. We were kind of in 2 separate worlds on that show, literally. But I think the person who I most was kind of starstruck from, it was Vanessa Hudgens from High School Musical. So I grew up watching High School Musical. I grew up doing musical theater, and so meeting her for a movie we did called Polar with Mats, who is just an incredible gentleman. But meeting her, I'm in the makeup chair, and she comes in and she's singing or she's humming, and all I want to do, I swear to God, Lee, all I want to do was just start like the male verse of her song, like soaring, flying from High School Musical, and I was like. In my head, I'm like thinking, like, is this a good idea? This is the first time we've ever met each other. Like, we're about to do this movie together, and I don't think I didn't end up doing that, but I ended up kind of like whatever she was humming. I kind of just like I can't remember the song, but I kind of like joined in, and then we just started chatting about musical theater, and then we ran lines, and unfortunately, the entire time because I was so starstruck by her, I was like, I'm like running lines with Vanessa Hudgens right now. So that was and I think I told her this after the fact, but she's so sweet, and so I think that was the first person that I just like, because it's crazy. You're meeting someone that you've only seen behind a TV screen, and who was a formative part of mine and my sister's upbringing with those movies. Like we loved them so much, and so that was really really a fun trip. That's for sure.
What a wonderful story. I was chatting with Molly Quinn yesterday in
Oh
another
yeah.
interview, and we talked about Avalon High, her decom movie that she did. I never would have expected, my 2 consecutive interview days to be talking about Disney Channel original movies, but I'm glad we are because they have such a special place in my heart.
Me too. It's the best.
And speaking of musicals and just music in general, your debut album, Variety Show, just was released, I believe, on Wednesday, November 15th. Maybe that's
Yes,
a
indeed.
Tuesday. Mixing up the dates and
Yeah,
the
no,
days
you
of the
got it.
week. But variety show, it's now available on all streaming platforms, Apple,
Cool.
Spotify, wherever
Yeah.
you get your music. Can you just kind of talk to me about your musical inspirations and balancing creating music as an artist while also being a very prominent actor?
That's very kind to say. Yeah, I think music has always been part of my life. I had an amazing piano teacher when I was 6 named Diane, and she kind of fostered that. My parents did, my siblings did, and yeah, she fostered the love of actually creating music too. Because a lot of times when young kids are being taught piano, it's a bit of a thing like, okay, we're gonna do the Russian masters, and you're gonna work, and so there's a bit of a different tactic, and I thank the Lord for it because she was so great, just encouraging creativity, and everyone around me was always amazing, encouraging creativity. And so yeah, I started in musical theater with my sisters. We did The Sound of Music when I was 14. That was my first job, and I was also my first like clue. It was like, oh my god, this acting thing's pretty fun, and I get to go up on stage and sing, and then go home and get enough money to buy myself a new expansion pack to Sim City. And so it's a bit of a it was a bit of a training thing for my brain to be like, oh, this is pretty great. And then yeah, I've been writing music for movies for a long time. Like that's been my other kind of love that I love to do. And people keep saying, what is it that you do? Like, who are you? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I like to do both. And so I'd been writing some pop music as well, and just like stuff that I've had in my head. And then my friends and family had kind of been exasperatedly telling me for years, like, what are you waiting for? Just get this music out there. And I'm like, it has to be perfect. And it's never going to be perfect. That's the thing about anything you create. And so I finally just set myself a deadline and was like, okay, if I if I set myself a deadline, I have to do it. And so November 15th, it got out of its cage and it's in the world now, which is very exciting.
And not only pop music, when I was listening to this album ahead of our chat, I was so surprised to hear Never Really Go. It's like a Celtic song. And if it wasn't
Yeah.
obvious by my name, Liam Crowley, like I'm very, very Irish. So to hear
Me too. Yeah.
the all the instruments and the music cues from Bantry, where my family's from,
No way.
it was Bantry,
Cool.
right near Cork. It
Oh.
was really, really cool. So I'm just curious about the love of Celtic music. What made you want to infuse some of that style into your debut album?
Well, I also Ireland. I see as my I'm not from there. My family's not from there. Down the line we are, but I went there a couple of years ago, and I've considered it a home away from home. It's just one of those things. But I'm actually from Nova Scotia, where there is a lot of it's technically called New Scotland, but there's a lot of Celtic influence. A lot of Irish settlers came over, and so yeah, I grew up with Celtic music. The Rankin family is an amazing band, a Canadian band that I grew up with, and so and like Riverdance, like that kind of stuff too. Like just these influences that were part of my childhood and part of my adulthood. Really, I was like, I want to create something that I would love to listen to, like in a East Coast kitchen party kind of Irish vibe. And so I hired an amazing fiddler to do a fiddle parts, named Rita Cooper, and it was a lot of fun to be able to do that because I've often been told in scores that I've done, people are like, sounds like very Celtic, right? And I'm like, really? And then I just realized it like seeps out of my blood and into the stuff that I'm doing, this kind of Celtic influence. So it was nice to go all in and make a song about it. But I appreciate you saying that, and I love that you loved it because there's Irish in me, and I love to expand on it.
And I don't want to put like one foot in front of the other too fast because you did just release your debut album, but you mentioned how this has been something you've been materializing for a long time and you really want to set a deadline. Now that it has been released, can we expect more music in the future, or are you going to put more of your eggs in your acting basket?
I think I've forgotten every bit of how to make music, and I don't know any more notes, so that's it. No, I really hope so. Yeah, there's a couple songs that didn't quite make it over the finish line for this album that I was like, that would have been nice to get out there. So now the great thing is, yeah, I can release a single, down the line or something like that. It's less nerve wracking now. I feel like, right, when you've done that first step of like, okay, here's me as an artist, me as a singer. And this is now I can kind of I've taken the big weight off, and now I can kind of move forward, which is going to be exciting. So yeah, expect something else. Hopefully decent. We'll see. Find out.
Absolutely. Well, we are, as the director, a very comic book heavy website. So I do got to ask you the superhero questions and all
Yes.
that. But rather than just say, oh, what character do you want to play? Because you wear so many hats, as I've mentioned, you compose music, you write music. Do you have any dream involvement in any superhero project as maybe a composer, someone who's writing original
Mm.
songs, or even just acting in a role?
That's a great question. I am unabashedly a massive superhero movie fan, and it's from all angles. Like, there's amazing themes, like musical themes that come from these movies too. Like Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme is unbelievable. Hans Zimmer, who did a lot of the Warner Brothers ones, like just amazing stuff. And so yeah, there's unfortunately sometimes when I write, I've just finished writing a movie for a big action movie, and a Hong Kong action movie, and I started out of the gate, I think, a little bit too heroic. Like, the director was like, "Oh, I think like this this theme is like, this guy's like a god. Like, he's a regular guy. Let's, like, rein it in." Because I think I automatically want to create big, big music and stuff. So that's any superhero movie, I would be happy. I'll work for 3 hot dogs, buns optional to do that. But similarly for an acting job, yeah, there's I'm a bit, I'm 5'6", and I'm not the most, I'm going to play a character in Moonfall called Scrawny, and I'm like, that's a pretty good description of what my physique is. So I think I'd have to work pretty hard to play superhero. But actually, the shirt I'm wearing right now is from the Children's Hospital in Toronto, and whenever I think of superheroes, I honestly think of them, because it's something that I think the word can be defined in so many ways now. And certainly superhero movies, like, yeah, you find these characters like, oh, you're a hero even though you don't have a cape on and a mask. So I'd yeah, short answer, I'd play anything in a superhero movie if anybody's watching this. And specifically the vibe of, Deadpool, like that kind of sense of humor coupled with amazing action, like that's my personal kryptonite. I love that stuff so much.
Yeah, well, what an amazing answer. Hopefully we get to see you at least, composing or acting in a DC or Marvel project
Oh,
in the
sign
future.
me up.
Josh, before we wrap this up, I know you got a bunch of stuff going on in 2022. Obviously, we can't talk about details specifically surrounding these projects, but I'm just curious as to what you can tell our listeners and our readers about what's going on at the start of the new year for you.
Well, hopefully a bit of a vacation. But I'm getting a tooth implant done, so that'll be fun. I don't know if anyone cares about that. But yeah, in terms of the career, I'm very lucky. I've got a movie, provided I don't get left on the cutting room floor. It's a giant movie, but I'm very, very lucky to be in Roland Emmerich's new movie, Moonfall, which is coming out February 4th. And it's man, it's going to be spectacular. It's going to be in IMAX. It's one of those movies you want to see in IMAX. And then, yeah, a couple other movies. A movie that I love called Cascade, which is a thriller that I shot with some now dear, dear friends of mine in Northern Ontario. It's coming out next year, as well as, yeah, a couple other ones too. And I'm just about to, sounds like I'm headed off to Newfoundland in a week to shoot a TV show there, which I've always wanted to go to Newfoundland in Canada. So yeah, it's going to be exciting, but I'm also hoping to just, yeah, have a small Christmas vacation. That would be nice.
Well, a lot of stuff to look forward to in the future, but the present is just as bright. Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City premieres November 24th in theaters, and you can listen to Josh's debut album, Variety Show, streaming now on any platform where you listen to music. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you so much, Liam. I'm so glad. Yeah, this has been so fun. Thank you.